Farm4Profit podcast. Take a listen, have a blast. Farm4Profit podcast. Learn about farming while having a laugh. Farm4Profit podcast.
This is going to be a lot of fun. We've never had such comfortable environment.
Yeah.
A beautiful day, Husker Harvest Day. So we've got a gentleman that we're excited to meet and explore a little bit about his Nebraska farm.
It's hard to say Nebraska, it is. Would you consider that? I don't think we've ever done a show sitting on couches, have we?
No, this is new. This is a lot
it's
of
like
fun.
kind of like
What
Zach
about-
Galifianakis, like between two ferns.
Between two ferns, yeah.
Yes.
Well, now we're between two
What about
implements.
the brewery? We interviewed them. Oh, my God. Holy smokes.
We're really going to turn it up now. You like that?
I guess. You ready?
Yep.
On today's Farm4Fun show from the 2023 Husker Harvest Days from the Sound Agriculture booth, we meet up with a leader in our industry. He's a mover and shaker. He's crossing divides, creating opportunities, embracing change as a fifth-generation corn, soybean, and popcorn farmer, where he's also the vice president of the Nebraska Corn Board. Please welcome from South Central Nebraska, Mr. Brandon Hunnicutt.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
I didn't throw up when I said Nebraska.
That would be no different if I had to look at Iowa State. At least that's Iowa State and
Well,
not
you
the other
know,
Iowa school.
I'm not even going to give you guys crap because you guys have gotten enough the last couple weeks.
Yeah,
you
I know.
So
I know.
I made a joke on Twitter this morning. I think it was an implement group said something about Nebraska Husker Harvest Days. I said, you mean like Bison Harvest Days, or what's going on?
Man, that's almost too soon for that.
I know. I kind of felt bad. I felt bad, but
That
they
is.
laughed.
That's good.
That's right.
So, Brandon, welcome to the show.
Well, I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
So, give us a background about yourself. I had a little 30,000 foot overview. Who's Brandon?
Yeah, so I farm not too far from here, right where we're at in Husker Harvest Days, just east of here, 25 miles or so, with my dad and my brother, and farm on the farm that's been the family for 120 years or whatever it is now, and my wife and I have 7 kids.
Wow.
So we raise kids and crops, I guess. So we have 23 to 10 is the age range. I always joke that 10-year-old is now running the household. I've given up. I'm just like, it's yours. She wants to run the combine this year. I'm like, cool, I don't care. Whatever you want to do, child. But yeah, we have our crop grounds all irrigated. We're always willing to try new things, whether it comes from the technology side or biologicals or whatever the case might be. Just trying to figure out, we get probably what it is. I get bored just farming the usual way, so I always try something different to see what I can screw up in the process and maybe learn something hopefully as well. And both my brother and I are involved with different organizations throughout the state, whether it's Farm Bureau or corn, or currently sit on the NCGA board of directors for about another, let's see, what's today, the 12th, about another 18 days, and then my term's up. So, a lot of things going on.
So I heard popcorn in there, too. You said you farm close to here. What all do you farm?
So we farm corn, soybeans, popcorn. We had some in organic production for a while, but it didn't really fit everything else we were doing. We like the organic. Part of what it was is for the organic popcorn. There's a popcorn facility, about 35 minutes from here to the northeast, in Chapman, Nebraska, a little itty bitty town, but they ship popcorn throughout the world. Get it at AMC theaters. You can get it at Nuts on Clark, if I understood right, and some of the Garrett's popcorn in Chicago. If you like Garrett's popcorn, they've provided for them as well. And so we were raising the organics for the organic popcorn from that standpoint.
And is it irrigated ground, or are you every acre?
Well, I joke that the fields are square. We irrigate in circles, and so everything's irrigated, but maybe 100 acres of dryland pivot corners, which this year are not very good. So
Pretty dry.
Pretty dry. We've been, right where I'm at, we're about last number I looked at over the last 12 months, we're 15 inches behind.
Okay.
So we're about half of normal of what we should be. So, it's been a challenging year, but that's farming.
I think we're sitting, I don't know if it's 15, but we're definitely getting, I know it's over 10 deficit there in Iowa. So right in central Iowa, where we're from.
So as you look at the popcorn side, that's one way that we would pay for our family vacations is we'd plant about 4 to 6 rows of popcorn, hand pick it, lay it out, flat tables, hand shell it, put it in old peanut butter jars, and put our little label on it. And that's what we'd sell as kids to help fund vacation. Your popcorn's a little bit more larger scale than that, I assume.
A little bit larger scale. A lot of years we're just planting 160 acres of popcorn, but when you start doing the math on how much popcorn's in a semi-load, that you take that to microwave popcorn, the numbers are massive, and it's a fun crop to grow. It's a challenging crop to grow. Just having a handful of rows would have been better than watching most years when popcorn just blows over and at the wrong time.
It goes down a lot, right?
All the time. So, almost. You can guarantee in any given year that it's going to, when the wind blows, at some point that popcorn will be laying flat, and you have to figure out how to pick it.
So how do you pick it?
We just use usually we're just using regular corn head. A couple years we tried some different things, and we're like, well, I guess we're just going to have to pick it off the ground. And so you got to treat it a little gentler. You got to work with it a little bit more just because it is it's going right into human consumption. But it's a challenge to grow, but, people love popcorn.
Isn't Spain a big popcorn producing country?
It maybe is. I'm not 100% sure.
So I asked that because I use a Maya corn head. And I know they come from Spain, I think. I'm not 100%. I'm 99%. And they said it's because there's a lot of popcorn over there because they have a special deal to get under the corn and pick it up easy without a reel.
That would be nice.
Yeah.
Because it's never easy to pick that popcorn up.
Yeah.
But.
So no, we have one. We had one during the Dray Show in 2020. That went through Iowa, and it was easy. We just replaced the row units, and then they have these chains that keep everything moving coming up the middle of the snouts, and it's pretty cool.
That's good to know.
Yeah, I'll show you a video when we get off. Yeah.
Perfect.
I love this, though, because it puts into perspective the ways that you can diversify, because you don't have any livestock. Right? And you're diversifying on a relatively small portion of your acres, but having a large impression.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's part of what we've done is, say we raise corn, but we've done everything from non-GMO corn to Inogen to white corn, all in the same year, which is insane.
Yeah.
But once you figure out how to make it work, plus the popcorn as well. Same on soybeans. We kind of live in that area that works really well for that, because we've raised seed corn in the past, but we've got all three of your major companies raising seed corn real close to us. You've got the white corn that ships all over the world, except for Mexico. But it's good right now. I mean, it's fun because we don't have to try to do something we don't know how to do, and that's raise livestock or something else.
And so you're fifth generation, is what I heard. How much of the new implementation technology did your predecessors do a lot of that, or is that you bringing that to the table and your kids?
It's a lot of it started. It was an interesting conversation I had a number of years ago with a fellow farmer from our area. And my grandpa thought this guy's dad was always innovating. This guy's dad always thought my grandpa was innovating. So there was all of that innovation that went on
Back and forth.
But we were some of the first in the area to do auto steer and some of that. From that standpoint, and that was more of. It was before my brother came back. I really enjoy the technology side of everything. So it was like, all right, what can we do? What different can we do if we're going to make these changes? What technology can we add on? And that it started out with the auto steer, and then it kept moving on to soil moisture sensors, since we're irrigated, to pivot control panels, all the things that what is it we can do. Not just from a profitability standpoint, but also from a sustainability standpoint, and some of those other, and just time.
So you got kids, you said 10 to 25?
10 to 23.
10 to 23. So have any of the older kids come home from college, brought you new ideas that made you kind of tilt your head like, well, maybe not?
No, not yet. Not yet. So probably the one who's going to bring the most ideas are the two boys that are 17 and 14, just because they're completely connected online, and they're always coming up with some sort of crazy idea.
They're listening to Corey on Twitter. Is
Yeah,
that what the deal is?
probably, yeah.
Hashtag corn, pork, and beans.
Right. I don't know if I'm the person they should be following.
Yeah.
Well, you're a great influencer. Since that's the word you like so much.
I'm not a role model, though.
That's right. Not a role model. But that is kind of neat to think about. So as you are playing around with innovation and continuing to push the envelope, it's nice to know that your family is on board with trying something new. So as you look at the fertility program, and obviously we see where we're sitting right now, what got you into looking into sound agriculture?
You know, always, I shouldn't say always. One of the things we've done on the farm is worked with the University of Nebraska, and early on-farm research. Used to be like 4 counties that did. It was farmer-derived research. Just what is it we can utilize, and some of that research was, pretty basic, mundane stuff of whether it was number of seeds you're planting per acre, or do row firmers work, what speed do you plant at. But we started looking at different, whether it was biologicals or different products that were out there. And so it was like, okay, what is it we can utilize? What is it we can do? We know where we're at in Nebraska, we have some issues with high nitrates in the groundwater, so we know we're trying to reduce that. So what are the products out there that we can utilize? And one of them came across was sound and using source, and it's kind of how it started, just experimenting from that standpoint.
So you're experimenting. What do you? Can you dig deeper? What are you experimenting with?
So you mean your products in all, or just?
No, just sound
source.
specific. I'm kind of curious. So the university kind of put you onto it. I'm sure you've had, and I have a follow-up question. What's an experiment that you had that didn't work? But let's first start with, what are you doing specifically with this that kind of drew you towards it and said, all right, we're going to try that. I think it's going to.
Okay, so I'll back up one step here. With the very first year we tried it, it's amazing what you find out on Twitter. Mm-hmm. And so it was kind of somebody, hey, there's this product out on, want to try it? Like, all right, sure, I'll. You're willing to let me try it, and you're going to apply it. I'll try that.
Sure.
And it was kind of interesting because it was 2019, and 2019 obviously was a very wet year. Nothing was going right. They came in. They said, hey, we're going to head and apply it, but we don't think we're going to see any results, and because we're applying it so late in the season. Mm-hmm. And we weren't controlling the parameters how they're spraying it. They went out there, brought the helicopter in, sprayed it, and then we were going through the field, and we're like, well, we think we see something, and we sent the data in, and they crunched all the numbers, and they said, hey, we've seen X amount of bushel increase. I'm like, well, that's interesting, because they're literally said we don't know if there will be any increase because of the timing of it, because we were almost brown silk. I mean,
okay.
it was after tassel. It was insane. So it's like, okay, so we'll try it the next year on a few more acres, and then like, well, let's go ahead and just do it on everything and see how.
So they were managing expectations.
Like Dave. Dave's good at managing expectations.
We can only go up from that.
We can only go up. Yes.
We want to try this. It's not going to do anything, we don't think. But if it does, you'll be really happy.
Yes. That's the products I like.
So have you consistently seen it work?
Yeah, and there's some of those things that, we can't really put a finger on if what, did it bring in yield, but last year there was it happened to be a popcorn field. And this was the one year the popcorn stood.
Oh,
so
okay.
Everything, we got into harvest time, we're like, all right, things are going to not stand in the popcorn. And it was dry again around here last year. And there were just some of the yield numbers we were seeing come in. We're like, okay, this isn't, yield monitor must be off type thing, on the popcorn. Since we're measuring that in pounds, not in bushels. Like, all right, something's off, so I'll just keep going, and we'll keep measuring off the auger wagon, and sure enough, it stood, and it yielded well, even on the dryland side, which is actually really surprising, just because of the year 2022 was. So, we had a lot of results, and so we're like, okay, we'll just keep doing it, partly as we're trying to reduce our nitrogen load, and trying. The other aspect of it is the timing of, do we want to mess with fertigation in the pivot late in the season? If the corn's tall, like we've seen some hybrids this year and over the last couple years, can't get in there late to put use Y drops or something like that. Right. So what is the other thing we can use that will help in that aspect? And, we keep using source.
So are you cutting back on nutrients then?
We are. We were talking about this year, because this year was very interesting, because we had one piece of ground that we picked up that I blew a gasket on, because I saw what our carryover in numbers were, the field loop, and they were so high that I was not happy. And
carryover in the soil?
In the soil,
yep.
2 feet down. 0 to 2 feet down were numbers that probably higher than what I'd put on for in some aspects.
So you were building that up.
I was like, wow, what is going on here? But we were running into this problem where everything was either either high or low or not consistent. We couldn't really get a handle on what was going on, and so we've tried to cut back more and more, and then just try to find that baseline of where we can be at.
Right. So you're driving your pounds of N per bushel down.
Yeah.
Where do you think? What's a typical Nebraska farm in this area? What do you apply? What's a person applying?
That's a
Is it
great
1-to-1?
question. Maybe not 1-to-1, but there's probably a lot that are getting close to 1-to-1.
Right.
And just some of the numbers we've seen, we have some real, in all honesty, we have some real problems with some of the soil tests. Just the numbers that they're using for calculating how much nitrogen you need. We think they're all high in Nebraska, and that it doesn't matter if it's a university or one of the private labs. We're determined. We think they're all too high. So we know we've got room to go down.
Farmers like their nitrogen. I mean, it's even
easy.
when it's expensive, it's still one of the cheapest
Yeah.
inputs to put on. And,
Right.
But we've found that you can drive your N numbers per pound per bushel way down on some of your good ground, right? If you're doing it right with the right product.
Yeah. That was one of the things we discovered early on through some of our research, is that the base number we need of base N going in, like just application pre-planting, this goes back to that on-farm research, really at about 75 pounds of N. If you're putting that on, whether it's urea, it doesn't matter what you're putting it on as, but that gets you up quite a ways towards tassel time, to where you can come back in and then apply what you need, or utilize a product to help move that a little bit better.
And are you doing a lot of in-season stuff with the pivots, vertigation type?
We haven't. We were joking about this earlier. We were going to this year, and we went from, all right, let's just take one field and try it, just because we have to go through our NRDs to make sure that everything's working right. And we kind of tried to go whole hog at one point, and it was like, well, as I ran the numbers, I went, we really don't need to apply any more at this time, based on what we'd already applied and applying the source, that we're like, we really don't need to. And we'll see if I made the right decision.
Right. So source is something that you've just implemented on 100% of your acres now?
Yeah, including the soybeans.
It's so nice when you have data and multiple years of data, and it comes from your farm, and then you can almost have a third party look at it. It's so easy I was telling Rachel this earlier. It's so easy to make decisions when you have that good data.
Yeah, when you have the data, or you can figure out what's worked and what's not, it hasn't worked. And we've had products that haven't worked.
Right.
Yep.
So you were going to ask that question, Dave. What's something that he's tried that didn't work?
Yeah, so we're in the fun part of our show, but we're farm for profit. So anything that can be profitable to the farmer, from drain tile to subsoil irrigation to grain bins to microbiologics, everything. We've interviewed a ton of people, and our whole goal is to normally figure out what's profitable, and that's why a lot of our listeners are tuning in, is for that reason. But I learn from failure because I do it a lot. So I'm always curious, like, what didn't work, and maybe it just was your farm. It wasn't necessarily a bad product, but it might just not have worked.
You're going back to some of the stuff we've done on-farm research. There are some products we tried, especially on soybeans, that just didn't work. There was big promises coming out, and it drove yield backwards. And that was, luckily we did it like on 10 acres.
Yeah, that
right?
doesn't work. Yeah.
No, and it was like, and the one product, they had huge promises, and we think, going back to the comment about doing it on your own farm, doing it in your own region.
Yeah.
So the data came east of here, and all their data was, it happened to come from Illinois, but it was, okay, does that work in Nebraska? And some guys just jumped all in, said, we're doing it on every acre, and it was a $30 an acre product 15 years ago, and the yield wasn't there. So those are some of the things that we've learned from just the trial and error. We had a couple, we strip till most everything, and we decided to change strip till machines one year, which meant we also had to go to a bigger tractor. And we realized that we made a mistake. It took 3 years for us to figure it out. It wasn't quickly, but all of a sudden we're like, we see some compaction issues that we shouldn't see, but we think it was using the big tractor and the wrong season. So all of a sudden now you're driving your yield backwards because you have big areas of compaction. And so we're like, well, we'll change that back to what we were doing before because it worked, and let's make sure it's working right.
That's interesting. We went to strip till as well a couple years ago, so that's a whole different beast of trying to figure out.
It is.
Well, didn't you get an upgrade to your tractor rather than buy a bigger tractor?
Right, yeah, we got a 16-row strip till bar, and we had a 9520, and our soils are pretty heavy, right? And so we just were kind of working it really hard, and so yeah, we put a module on it.
I got you.
Yep.
So as you sit on the National Corn Growers Board and then all your other opportunities, do you get to do some travel with that? I can't remember which boards take the trips.
Yeah, a lot of times it's when you're looking at on the checkoff boards, through working with U.S. Grains Council or U.S. Meat Export Federation, even the state of Nebraska or other states have done some cooperatives. So yeah, there's been some times I've done some traveling. That kind of slowed down during 2020, and being on the national board, some of those opportunities just didn't align. But I've had some pretty unique opportunities to go to places that I normally wouldn't go, just because it's halfway around the world.
I know my dad on the Farm Bureau board, Mom and him got to go to Brussels on a trip once for the president's trip, and then I think they also got to go to Germany or something along those lines.
Okay.
It might have been in the same trip. It was
Really?
Belgium and Germany.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What? I'm kind of curious. You said you get bored. You have 7 kids. You're diversified.
Yeah.
And you and sound like your brother is involved in boards. Like, why is that sitting on a board important to you and to the community?
I think being on the board is important. It's not just hey, look, I'm on a board, but it's like, okay, what else is going on out in the world? What is it? What can we try to influence in those areas that we can, really just gripe about at the coffee shop or gripe about on Twitter? But who is it we can reach out to? What are those changes we can make? What are those next innovations that maybe you take a checkoff dollar? What is it you can invest in to maybe find, whether it's that next ethanol or whatever the case might be, to help the fellow farmers become more profitable, your area to become more profitable? And I really think it's important to help try to, drive some of those decisions and work with the others that are willing to look at some of those. And so, there's always challenges. I mean, it doesn't matter what, you take a year like whether it's this year or last year, 2012, and you're sitting on a checkoff board and you're trying to figure out how you're going to fund your fellow partners because, you don't know what your yield's going to be and it looks like it's bad. But there's a lot of great opportunities, whether it's the state board, national board, or even our local Corn Growers Association.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Well, each one of our fun games, each one of our fun shows, we like to play games with our guests. Try to just break it up a little bit too. But we're starting the new Farm4Fun format. We used to start off with introductions. 3 minutes of probably boring from the host, but we always like to attribute our listeners and thank them for the reviews. So we're going to drop in a listener review right now. This one came from Apple Podcasts itself, boys. See if you can guess which episode this is referring to.
All right.
Wait, who's on first base? Great try, guys. Love your effort.
I don't know.
Do you remember the Truterra episode when we kept talking about upstream and downstream and upstream?
Yes.
Trying to figure that out? Yeah, so we got to go deeper into the carbon market, and we got to talk to the upstream, which we thought was upstream, the companies that actually purchase the carbon credits, not the ones that are paying the farmers to make the adjustments in their practices. And we got our ups and downstreams all.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's actually a downstream customer of the carbon. The farmers, the upstream, it was
on third base. I'm on third base.
You were third base.
That's right.
Who's on first? I still remember that skit.
Yes.
That was that's a great skit. But listeners, thank you so much for leaving us reviews. Make sure you check us out on YouTube. But we're going to play a word association game with you. So we're going to say a word, you say a phrase or whatever comes to your mind first, and we'll do that for just a little bit before we jump back in to more about yourself. So
All right.
We're going to start off with an easy one. Husker.
Hope.
Dave, what would you have said?
Harvest. Just because we're at Husker Harvest Days. HHD.
So why say hope?
Because the last few years as a Husker fan has been miserable, so I always have to have hope.
Living on hope.
Yes.
What immediately just came to my mind was Hoiberg. We saw that ugly poster of
That
him.
pissed me off last night.
Yeah.
You guys took Hoiberg from us.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Hey, you got to remember, though, there's ties back to Lincoln, so.
A little.
Yeah, like a shoestring.
Yeah.
as his grandpa or whatever.
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
So as a Husker fan, is it more one sport over the other? Did you go to the volleyball game?
I was going to say volleyball's huge.
Yes, I was at the volleyball game.
You were at the 92,000?
At the 92,003. Yes, that was insane.
So you probably brought your whole family just to get 10 on the ticket?
Yeah, we had everybody there.
Wow.
So, yeah, and a few other friends around us. And it's going to be one of those events that in 5 years everybody was at. So, it's going to be like 920,000, not 92,000, because everybody was there.
So what's up with Nebraska and volleyball? Because I have friends out in Ogallala, and all the time on their Facebook feed, it's nothing but volleyball.
Because they can't talk about football.
That's a great question because it's one of the interesting things they did at the football or the volleyball game was they honored a bunch of these coaches, high school coaches, and almost all of them had been doing it for 40 years. They've either just recently retired. So there was this direct correlation from when Terry Pettit became the coach of the University of Nebraska and started to drive that from, they talked about putting up posters in the bathrooms at the university to get people to come to the games, to the high school coaches jumping in on it, and now it's just become this. It's a huge thing, and maybe it's because some of the other, sports in Nebraska aren't always the best.
I like that. This next one's going to be 2 words. We'll get your reaction to it. Iowa corn.
Stinks. I think actually the poster of Iowa corn sucks. But,
Is that what it is?
I think that's what the T-shirts say.
We had this argument on our last podcast. Is there any difference chemically in Nebraska corn versus Iowa corn? We say yes.
Only in quality.
Well, as long as we agree, Illinois corn's the worst.
Okay,
Yes,
fair
we
enough.
can all be on board.
It is kind of funny when Illinois pipes up and we're both arguing and we're like, shut up.
No, I've got some really good friends in Iowa corn. If we talk about the association, and I got some good friends from over there.
Do you know Elizabeth
Yes.
Burns Thompson?
Yep.
She moved to Nebraska.
She
What
just
did you
became-
guys
like,
do?
What, she just came over.
You
Yeah.
recruited her or what?
I don't know. One day she's like, "Hey, I'm moving to Nebraska." I'm like, "Well, you finally found the good life." So.
She's not going to be
Says
here
that
long.
on the sign.
No.
Hey, yeah, the good life's better than it's not for everyone.
Yeah.
Right.
What about resistance?
Weeds, Palmer amaranth.
We just had Megan put out an article saying that they found 2 strains
Oh, no.
in Iowa, a couple of counties. Not too widespread, but
Where at?
you're going to put me on the spot. We have to
You're
go
the
look her
news
article up.
It's all around us. It's
Really?
yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely here.
Not good.
No.
Yeah. What would you have said, Dave, to resistance?
Ohms.
Oh.
I loved electronics in high school, so if you're negative ohms, you got resistance in your capacitor, or not capacitor, but your diode.
That's funny. Let's move. I just looked up at clouds. Clouds.
So this is the
Clouds.
beauty of three different hosts. You get 3 different opinions.
Clouds. Definitely not rain.
No. It hasn't been lately.
No.
Early harvest.
Early harvest. That's what you think of when the word
Well,
clouds?
when he said no rain, then I
Oh.
just immediately thought early harvest.
Okay, where's your head at? Clouds?
In the
In the
clouds.
clouds.
In the clouds? That's what
Yeah.
yours. Yeah. I figured that's
I just
what it was
think
going to go.
you said clouds. I thought daydream.
Oh, okay. Which is what you were doing?
Yeah.
That's great. Well, then you come up with the next word.
Purple.
What can I say about Kansas State? That's
There you go.
So that's the first thing that came to my mind, too.
I threw up in my mouth.
He was just looking over there at the guy at the bar. And then he's like, oh,
Actually,
something
fun
I'm full of.
fact, I did not even notice that.
Did
I
you
don't
not?
know
You are
why
so
No,
full
I
of
didn't.
it.
It just, unless it's subconscious. I don't know.
The fun thing, though, about K-State is I'm neither a K-State nor a Cowboys fan, but to see, is it Deuce Vaughn, the little teeny tiny tailback in the NFL, just to see all the memes and the pictures of just he goes up next to a 6'8" lineman and
Yeah.
he's 4 foot tall.
Size of his leg.
Yeah, that's kind of neat.
Yep.
So as you come into a show like Husker Harvest Days, do you get to travel? Do you come Farm Progress? Do you go to Commodity Classic? Do you do other shows?
Yeah, I've never done Farm Progress. I've always wanted to and need to get out there. Commodity Classic, yes. One of the roles I have is co-chairing Commodity Classic for this upcoming show in Houston.
wow.
So it's always fun to come to these shows. Just from my perspective, like Husker Harvest Days, you just run into people. The only time you ever see them is here. You might live 10 miles away, but for some reason you see them all 3 days. If you're here all 3 days, here. But just seeing what's new out there, whether it's new innovations, equipment, ideas. Walking in earlier, saw 2 of the drones out there, the spraying drones that were, I knew how big they were, but even just here, seeing how big they are, it's kind of fun to see just the different ideas that pop up around here.
Until we started going to shows as a podcast, I was never a multi-day attendee.
No.
And it is amazing the number of people that we run into that, I'll be there all 3 days. And they make valuable time while they're here. I mean, it's not like they just wandered. Well, that one lady was reading a book at our table. But
Right.
her husband obviously found value in being here for multiple days.
Yeah. But how often did you go for that one day and say, I saw everything today?
Oh, no, never. Nope.
Right.
No, we tried that at Louisville one time.
Yeah.
Because we were on a time crunch, and I hurt the next day because we power walked that whole thing.
It was the bourbon.
Yeah, it was probably
I was just going to say, I don't know if
but I don't know what we saw outside of just remembering seeing tobacco at the Syngenta booth, which was cool because, I'm in Nebraska. I don't get to see tobacco.
Right. So when you describe, so we got Farm Progress Show in our backyard when it's in Boone. And we obviously know what that is, and we can describe that. If someone's first time coming to Husker, what do you see? What's something that you don't want to miss?
I would have said the John Deere booth,
Oh.
but they're not here.
No.
That was usually my first stop because I got my John Deere toy. I think it's really one of the interesting places I like to go, besides all the usual stops of whether it's the equipment manufacturers or your seed companies or your biologicals, is the University of Nebraska has a building, which is always fascinating just to go in there because they have a little bit of everything. When I brought the kids here when they were little, the one would be looking at the entomology stuff, and it was like, oh, okay. The funny part is she thought being a bug doctor meant that you would do surgery on bugs. Once she realized that that's not exactly what it was, she wasn't so interested anymore. But some of those things that you don't get the typical opportunity to see or talk to, and there is the pork place down there. That's the must stop place if you're coming to Husker Harvest Days, because they have a bacon sandwich that is amazing.
Hear that, Rachel?
Yes, I think she was telling us about it.
Yes.
She was telling us exactly about that's what we're having for lunch tomorrow, is what she was
really?
going to go get, I think.
Okay.
Or no, it was the ribeye sandwiches she was going to grab. We had spaghetti and meat robos penne pasta
Yeah.
and meatballs today for lunch.
That's good.
Yeah.
I'm always amazed at all these shows at how, like, this one's pretty cool because it's all paved roads and everything, and we've got to attend a bunch of them, but how quick people can set up their booth, and there's some elaborate booths here, and but they've got it down to a science, and they do it over and over and over, and I think, man, it's just got to be time consuming and money consuming, but they all want to share the message of innovation.
Yes.
Is what I'm going to say. And being a salesperson myself, I always want to talk to people that want to engage, but I'm afraid that people don't want to engage because they're just afraid it's a sales pitch. Do you ever walk around thinking, I just don't want to engage because I think I'm going to be caught there for 2 hours? Or do you find more value of actually trying to one-on-one with folks?
I think it really depends on the situation. If it's that, all right, how much do I want to get involved in a conversation at this moment versus what am I trying to see? But yeah, it's both. But you see that, and sometimes I have learned that those times I'm like, I don't really want to have this conversation. They stop, somebody grab me, and they're like, oh, that was a really valuable conversation because I
Talked
learned
about that
something.
earlier, Tanner.
I should not judge what I'm going to stop or not stop at
Right.
based off if I'm going to have a good conversation.
Yeah. So on the way over, we decided to count how many fields have had harvest activity in it, or had some at some point. What did we get, 26, 27?
27, yep.
Something like that. And it really picked up after Omaha. I think we were only at 5 or 6 when we hit Omaha.
I'd say we said, a quarter of them were beans,
Probably a quarter.
and
then
about a quarter of them was seed corn.
I'd say probably half of what was remaining was probably seed corn. But have you guys started harvest yet?
We have not. Right around us, I know there was a little bit harvested, some dry land fields that obviously didn't have any rain. We haven't started yet. Most everything around us has been seed corn. I was saying our one field of soybeans, I kept saying, maybe 10 days, and because it's soybeans, that could be Saturday. I don't know.
Yeah.
Figure we might be in some corn if it stays like it looks like it's going to in the next couple weeks, just to try some.
Was there quite a bit of hail that came through here? Because I feel like I saw quite a bit that was stripped.
There was a spot, if you go between York and Lincoln, there was a spot there that got back-to-back years got hit really hard, and so there's some pretty stripped up stuff. But there's not like last year. There was all sorts of damage around here, just fields wiped out. But this year there's been some hail, but I think for it to hail, it has to rain.
It's got a point.
Well, it's the worst when you don't get rain, and then you do, and then it's hail.
Then it's hail.
Yeah.
Or it
Hard rain.
comes with a lot of wind.
Yeah.
So as you go about your farming tasks, do you have a favorite job? You got a favorite role on the farm?
Usually it's when I get in the data side and just trying to look at some of that and trying to figure that out. But if it was actually on the farm, it's probably running the combine. You know, even though some years you really hate it just because the one year where everything breaks. But you're just kind of seeing what's going on and then trying to figure out what I need to do for next year, or was there something that worked, didn't work, or why is this field not doing what it's supposed to?
Right.
Do you have a favorite data source for collecting it all? Are you still just like an Excel spreadsheet guy? Do you keep it in Dropbox, Google Drive, or do you use like one of the key products from a vendor that
John Deere Ops?
a John Deere Ops where you're trying to overlay everything?
Yeah, usually we're using like John Deere Ops or Climate, using multiple sources and trying to find that next item that might work to really start looking at some of that data more efficiently and effectively. But there's some of that too that is still Excel spreadsheets at time, especially when you're doing research stuff.
So it sounds like you're trying to improve all the acres you have. Do you ever try to just buy more acres?
No. There's been times we've, land prices are not cheap, obviously, right now, but we're kind of in that area where there's been some ground shake loose here over the last couple of years, but it's been, very specific reasons and not, some of it fit in well with our operation, but we're kind of blessed where half our acres are within a couple miles of my house, and a couple miles of the bin site, and as we're trying to figure out how to utilize the bin site, make sure we have the data coming in through the bin site that we're utilizing, and so that becomes a challenge. Do we really want to? And we've had that conversation. How big do we want to get? What's your trade-off? I've got 7 kids. My brother has 4. Kind of in that age where they're doing other activities. So how much you want to be at your kids' activities or not? What
is land selling for in your area?
So we just had some not too far from us, about 15 miles, that sold last week. One quarter went for 16.2 and one went for 15.9.
Is that Adam Marshall?
I think it was.
I think Adam Marshall sold that. Good friend of mine over here.
Yeah.
Wow.
So they've
got friends everywhere.
Friends everywhere. That's good. So I think which kind of shocked us that it went that high, but a lot of it's been going for 12, 13. So
yeah, I've seen it tick up in Nebraska, which is crazy because typically I've seen guys sell Nebraska ground and move to Iowa, not because corn's better, because the taxes are cheaper.
That would make sense.
Why is taxes so high for land here?
We have nothing else to tax.
Is that it?
Yeah. Well, a little bit of it is, when you have less than 2 million people living in your state, and most of that, 60% of that, 70% of that population is Lincoln, Omaha metro greater area.
Yeah.
You got to find a way to, as much as we complain about the county roads and stuff, it is nice to have square miles and gravel on the roads, and still have schools in small towns, and you're not everybody's consolidated. So there's, as much as we hate the property taxes, there are some intrinsic benefits to the greater state, and especially rural state, but we all hate them.
Maybe you should just tax those Husker tickets. You sell out all the time, right?
There already is a tax on that.
Yeah.
To be a season ticket holder, there's already a fee to be the holder of the ticket.
Right. It's just not going to the right place.
No. Use it for property tax reduction.
So are you going to, being a 5th generation farmer, you got 7 kids, are you going to encourage them all to get an ag? or what's your thoughts there as like a generational farmer? Your brother's in it too, so he probably maybe they have kids that are going to go into it. What's the thought for? We have a lot of young listener base, and as they are, maybe their dads, moms want them to go into the next gen. So you being the previous gen, the predecessor, what's your thought process there as you're trying to encourage your kids?
It's a lot of ours has been what are they interested in? What is it that drives them to want to get up in the morning and do what they want to do. I've got one who's in cosmetology. And that's what she loves. Another one who wants to do early childhood development, and which is very important to the rural economy because we need daycares. We need
people to stick around home too.
So if you've got a dual income family, somebody needs to be able to help with that situation. One of the things that try to encourage kids, what is it you not only what is it you want to do, but what is it you're good at? What if you want to come back to the farm, what is it you could do to bring value? So if it's, I don't need you just to go to the university to get a ag degree or go to one of the community colleges to get an ag degree. If you're big into computer science or you're big into robotics, go down that road. We have this company. They're the grain weevil. They're trying to develop the robot for the grain bins.
Yep.
His brother shot out the idea to the guy at church one day, but my 17-year-old has messed around with them, and he's the first one to be able to drive, outside of their business unit, the first one to drive that robot in a grain bin. And so, if you're interested in that, go down that road because there's
always ways to come home.
There's always ways to come home. The world of agriculture is changing. That, you just look at how computerized everything is. You just can't fix anything.
Even the data you were talking about, you could be a data analyst and still come home and be successful in farming, I would assume.
Yeah, somebody that can actually look at the data you're bringing in and say, okay, let's make these logical changes because of what we're seeing.
You guys have heard that song "Where Corn Don't Grow"?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always think of that when I think of kids leaving, want to go somewhere where we don't have to put up with corn, but not a whole lot of places.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the corner of these pivot fields.
Well played. Well played.
And I was that kid that I did not want to come back to the farm. I wanted to go do something else, and the opportunity arose, and ended up back on the farm. So it wasn't that, I ended up getting a degree in ag business, but that wasn't what I started out at.
What did you want to do?
Originally, I was going to go be an orthopedic surgeon, and then I got my butt kicked in a chemistry class, which after the fact found out that that's just what that professor did. But, it was like I want to do something different. But, if I'd have known, when I graduated high school that farming was going to change as rapidly as it was, everything was going to change like that, probably would have gone to something different, computer science related, something like that would have been right up my alley.
Very cool.
Yeah, and it's a fascinating conversation that we get to have with listeners and people that we run into, that those that adopt the small changes end up so much further ahead, and it's an easier adjustment to make for the small adjustments from model year to model year or whichever it is. Those that decide, all right, this is the year we're going to upgrade. We haven't bought something new in 10 years, and you jump into it and it feels like a spaceship. So there's incremental value to spending incrementally throughout the process, trying to continue to keep up. You don't have to do it all, but if you stay on pace, it makes it a lot easier to transition.
So, question for you. You said your brother works with you?
Yes.
So you got family in the business too. So Corey's got family in the business, and they have bush light safety meetings. Do you guys have? I know we've got the opportunity to interview a ton of people. They're like, well, it's easier to split dollars than it is to split acres. Let's do this, or how do we transition? Or it's always interesting to dive in. Like, since you're letting us have a view a little bit, what do you do one side and your brother does another side, or do you just butt heads, or what's that look like?
No, we actually, my brother and I, we work real well together. There's a lot of things that we just complement each other on, just kind of where our interests are and probably our thought process and our decision-making process. And Dad is at that age where, maybe transitioning out, maybe not. He's at that age where a lot of farmers are at, where they're just like, I don't know yet. And so what does that look like in the next 5-10 years as far as what we're doing? Just how is it, we've had those conversations because we went through it when my grandpa split up the farm between my dad and my uncles years ago, we end up with those weird situations where I live is where the shop is, and all the store for the equipment storage is, and where my brother lives, there's not. So if you split up the farm, how do you manage some of those situations and make sure that where's the, if you each need a shop, where's that going to go? You know, how do you split up the bin site? You know, some of those challenges that you know, when you look at it now, you're like, you know, we didn't think this through very well. You know, you make those purchases or those changes have come around, and you're like, oh, there's some ramifications coming down the line.
That's what Husker Harvest Days are for. I saw a shop builder right over there. There's a grain bin guy. There's
the big chief setup. That's like the whole farm.
we could set you up.
Yeah,
no, it'd be good.
So you sit on the corn board, you try cool new things like sound agriculture products. What are you most looking forward to, you know, in the next 5 to 10 years for future stuff?
You know, looking at robotics and AI, just how do those play on the farm? What are those robotics? I mean, obviously we talked about grain weevil and in the grain bin, but what are some of those other robotics out in the field that can be of use? You know, whether it's you know, talking to the guys from Kansas like Clint Bauer and some of the stuff that he's doing. What is it we can implement on the farm to make it better? You know, we've tried the drones, different types of drones to take photos and try to figure out how that works. You know, how is AI going to play into this? How is that going to change our decision-making process or computer learning? Just those things that will maybe maybe help make the decisions easier, but, you know, give us more insight. Maybe it becomes hey, we can't farm this full 160 acres like we've always farmed it. Maybe it's these areas are going to be a different crop, you know, and what do some of these secondary cover crop markets that are coming out, how can we implement those?
Yep. Do you think autonomy is going to be in our lifetime?
I think so. You know, the one day I was rented a car to go to a meeting, and it had, you know, kind of the self-driving, not really the self-driving mechanism, but, you know, it followed between the lines. And it's like, if we can do that on a road, you know, we should be able to figure out this on a field where I don't have to be in the tractor, because I like being in the combine. I hate being in the tractor.
So you would be an early adopter of that?
Yes. Yeah.
I can't remember now. I think it was Tyson's Foods. They've got a couple of routes that will go from the plant to cold storage that will be 100% autonomous trucks.
Oh, wow.
That'll be refrigerated box trucks. That it's like an 8-mile round trip, and they'll start off with initial co-pilots to monitor it. But as soon as it passes all tests, that dedicated line will be 100% autonomous.
That'd be nice.
I think we have to. I'm an early adopter in my business, but like I think we have to. Corey and I were talking about this the other day. I think everything gets maybe smaller and more of them. And one thing I didn't think about is, you know, you were talking about how close you want to be to your farm. We just talked about it, just that you could be 80 miles away because you could have just a set that you could drop off and it's autonomous and let it go back home, monitor it from your phone or your computer, whatever it is, or you could just have a second set of gear over on that operation. So I think it will expand not just our horizon, it will expand how far we farm. And then, but the road capacity, the infrastructure that we have, I think we've maxed capacity. So everything maybe gets smaller, but then you don't need the conveniences. We don't need leather seats. We don't need air conditioning if it's all, you know, without that. So we might be able to lessen the cost, but then buy more.
Well, according to my in-laws, we don't need air conditioning anyway, especially if I'm the one that's in it.
Well, if you get small enough, you don't need the emissions either.
That's true.
Yeah,
And that could be big.
yeah, we learned that from Tractor Tim.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that would be a really big.
Yeah. Don't have to mess with putting DEF in a tractor.
Right.
Combine,
Or just the sensors that are going bad with it. Or
Yeah.
You know, even when you look at spraying stuff, you know, you're all right. Do I need a 120-foot boom, which is huge, you know, when we have one? But you know, what are we maximizing every acre, or are we just spraying every acre? You know, and what is it? What is it? A robotic situation can do. But to your point, you know, you can haul it, and you're not damaging equipment, or you're not running those tires out like
Yeah.
running the hours on them going down
Yeah.
the road. Yep.
Yeah.
I wonder if you'll just hire other companies like with it, or equipment companies to go, hey, send that to my farm, send that to this farm, send that to this farm, and then somehow you just remotely control it. And there's just operators that service the equipment, and you lease it out. I was wondering on AI, have you done anything with? I think if I remember right, these guys will correct me, but we interviewed a guy with AI technology for grain marketing. Do you do anything with that?
I haven't yet, but that would be. That's one of those things that over time you just thought about. Like, there's got to be some way to do this that
You see
makes more
here?
sense.
We can introduce
Snark,
him.
Snark's coming. Yeah, it's
Okay.
called Go Farm
Go
Yourself.
farm yourself.
GF1.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, we've been around those guys a
Yep.
little bit, but just haven't done it. But to me, it makes a lot of sense because
Right.
anything I can do. I'll take it back to irrigation. We started using the sensors to take the emotion out of irrigating. Like, okay, it's hot. I don't want to be out there. I need to run, but maybe I don't, and vice versa. So we've automated that to an extent. Well, why can't I do that in grain marketing? So I just let something else do it, make the decisions.
Nice. Well, every one of our interviews we try to keep unique except for one or two parts, and one of those is the question we ask at the end of every show.
Okay.
So we have been asking what you enjoy most about working with farmers. You are one. You do, but you work with them just like we do. So what do you enjoy most about working with farmers?
There's a lot of the same goals in mind, which makes it nice, but everybody does it a little bit different. Nobody does it the right way, and it took me a long time to just get to the point of saying, okay, just because they're doing it different doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means it's different. So seeing those different ideas that are out there, trying to figure out why somebody's doing something the way they are, and then learning from them, because there's always something to learn, whether it's just in sitting around at a farm show or at a meeting and you find something out that you're like, oh, I never thought about that.
Yeah, we had that moment like we were talking about with the autonomous. We sat there and went, okay, how are we going to autonomously harvest? There's,
Or haul it.
Yeah, correct. That you can
Store
get
it.
to it.
Dry it.
So there's a lot of autonomy that gets all the way to the finish line. But even if you had bags or on-site bin storage, that's still a logistic figure that's going to take a little bit to figure out.
It is, and I think that may be one of those that's the last thing they get to. But if you can get everything else up to that point where you can, think about it. Mention doing stuff with the Grains Council, but you always hear those buyers that come over here. They come over on a trade mission. They go, I want to buy that bin. Like, well, that's right now theoretically impossible. But you start talking to some people that are like, we're maybe in 5 years we'll decommoditize soybeans and or corn, and you're like, oh, this, and then the brain starts working. How quickly that can change, but what does that mean on the other end?
Yep. But this has been a pleasure, especially an interview that we didn't know you before we started. Corey's the only one that stalked you online.
I did.
Beforehand, but
He did follow me back, though.
I did.
Oh, look, that's nice of you.
Yeah.
It was one of those weird things because I'd just seen a tweet, and then or Zeet, whatever we're supposed to call him.
What is that?
And then you followed me, and I was like, what? Did I like that? Did I? It was that weird moment, like, okay, I'm being stalked.
You
Gotcha.
were.
That's
you
good.
actually were.
That's good.
Yeah. So that's now out in the open.
Okay.
But if other people want to stalk you, what's the best way for them to do that?
On Twitter, it's Corn-Fed Farmer, or a lot of times it'll be on LinkedIn, and it's just Brandon.Hunnicutt. So learn a lot of stuff there as well.
Yeah, we appreciate it. We really do. Listeners, we appreciate you and everything that you do for us. And we appreciate Sound Agriculture and having them. This most comfortable setting we've been in a long time.
Until the last 5 minutes.
The sun changed
We're
about
in the
an
hot
hour
seat.
ago.
We were in the
Us two-
hot. You were comfortable.
We've been in the sunshine
Tanner's
for
in
an
the
hour.
nice plus shade.
Listeners,
It
you
is
can't
hot.
even tell, but we've been sitting in the hot sunshine. These guys.
Here, man yourself. All right, Corey, what do you tell the listeners?
I say I'm going to go crack a bush light. You should, too. You deserve it.